Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Sons of the Pitch, an American soccer podcast. We're excited to have you join us again this week. We are going to be recapping the USMNT's game against Mexico. Whether you want to hear about it again or not, we're going to talk about it. We're going to look at the game going on right now against Uruguay, and then also keep it international and touch on the Concacaf Nations League. After the break, we're going to round up all the MLS action from this past week, and then get some playoff implications. And by the way, Chicago Fire have some breaking news about their new stadium, so we'll give you an update about that. In the meantime, stay tuned, and thanks for listening to the Sons of a Pitch. Put the guitar riff in there.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, this is Nick Pateras for the Sons of a Pitch. Thanks for coming back and listening again. I'm sitting across the table from my good friend and fellow host, Michael Yalmy, and we are ready to talk some soccer.
Yes, we are.
Mike, I know you're Canadian by birth, but you're American by naturalization. Like I don't know what you call it. Are you as depressed as all the other men's national team fans here in the United States?
Yes, I am.
It was definitely a depressing kind of mood from an international soccer standpoint, and we want to thank everyone who has been commiserating around the soccer community. Thank you to everyone who's been following us on Twitter, especially our recent follows at USMNT Takes, at 24th Minute, Dwayne Rollins, who is kind of an expert on all things Canadian soccer, so looking forward to his content.
Yeah, this is probably one of the first podcasts that I ever listened to was Dwayne Rollins' podcast with Kevin Laramie, the Two Solitudes podcast from back in the day. They've changed it up now. I know the name's a little different, but they run a big podcasting network, and he's probably one of the guys that got me into podcasting. So thanks for following us.
Wow, Dwayne, you've contributed to the Sons of the Pitch. You've helped our birth. Our nascent little podcast was a little piece to you, so thanks for that. Also, The Peel at The Peel 05, a Houston Dynamo podcast, and a lot of good content coming out from those guys. They've got everything they do up on YouTube. Give them a listen, check them out if you're in the Texas area or if you're just interested in all things Houston Dynamo. Sports Talk Garage Network, an excellent sports podcasting network. Go check them out. Also, at The New Dynamo, reminding everyone of MLS Cup champions in 06 and 07, as well as last year's U.S. Open Cup champions, The New Dynamo for all things Houston. So it sounds like we're getting some Texas followers, Mike.
Yeah.
As also, thank you to Brian Brashaw, Jacob Blundusky, and Alex at Alex_KY87. Thank you guys for following us and joining our conversation on Twitter. For all our listeners, you can follow us along at SOP Soccer. Send us a message, send us a tweet, let us know what you think, and we'll cover all of your questions and comments here on our show. Also, thank you to our Facebook followers at Sons of a Pitch Soccer on Facebook. There you go. So it's a family affair here. Also, thanks to...
It's kind of embarrassing, actually.
A little bit. But hey, you know what? If it wasn't for our parent support, we probably wouldn't be doing anything in this world.
Yeah.
Also, thanks to Alex Saronis, Joel Hampton, and my wife, Nikki Pateras. There we go. More family stuff again here on Facebook. And we're also now on YouTube. If you haven't checked out Mike's predictions that he puts out every week, if you haven't checked out his kind of midweek updates that he's putting out, follow us on YouTube. Mike, what's the YouTube handle or the YouTube tag?
Yeah, so it's Sons of a Pitch Soccer Podcast is the search that for the channel, and you will find us there. You can't miss us with our logo there. Thanks to everybody that's been jumping on and giving it a watch. The picks have been slightly getting a little bit better this week. 3-2 record out of the 5 games. I was so close to 4-1, but got screwed right at the end on one of the games. But
did you pick the U.S.-Mexico game?
I did unofficially, and I
Unofficially.
picked the U.S. to win, so I'm glad it was unofficial.
Well, I guess it helps your stats, but it definitely doesn't help ease the pain of all of us who are USMNT supporters. So let's get right into that. Mike, what were your quick impressions after watching this embarrassment, tragedy, developmental backpedal? Like, what do you want to call it?
It was disgusting. I don't have much to say about it other than the fact that it was horrible. There was nothing positive to take out of this game. I didn't see anything where I was like, oh yeah, you could build off of that, you could build off of this. It was just bad soccer. They got dominated by Mexico. And you want to start seeing some type of growth. I know this is just a friendly. I know this doesn't mean anything, but as we've always said, and U.S. soccer fans have always said, there's no such thing as a friendly between U.S. and Mexico, and that's true. This one did get heated up at times, but you know, it just they got to start doing something better. And I think something that really recapped this well was Christian Pulisic came out and said, you know, we're kind of afraid playing these guys, and we kind of play timid, and we're not playing our best because we're kind of acting afraid. And he's like, that needs to change, and that needs to change now. And I think that pretty much sums it up as best as possible, that they're just not playing good enough. You gotta start climbing the ranks and playing a decent game against Mexico when you're playing, regardless. Friendly, Gold Cup, doesn't matter. It should be a tight, competitive game, and this one was anything but.
Wow, so Pulisic kind of confirming a bit of an inferiority complex that the U.S. players have against Mexico. And it's kind of funny to think, because Mexico has always been the North American power, but Mexico has always thought themselves better than what they've played. You know, the Mexican soccer fans and the Mexican Federation and the Mexican players think that they're like a top 5, top 10 team in the world, but yet have never gotten past the round of 16 in a World Cup.
Right.
Yeah, they win Gold Cups.
Yeah.
The U.S. has won a handful of Gold Cups as well, and really that's the only competition that Mexico has had in recent history. Maybe throwing Costa Rica in like the most recent 5-6 years. But yeah, doing it in Concacaf isn't enough for Mexico. However, they've got Tata Martino now, and he has had an impeccable coaching record wherever he's gone, be it Argentina, Atlanta United, and now with the Mexican national team. He's unbeaten in his first
11 games.
2 years with them. Yeah, 11 games. So we all know how good Mexico is and how good they can be, how they think of themselves. But the conversation here is USMNT. And you're right, the U.S. has to think of themselves differently. I kind of talked myself off the ledge. Like, I was ready just to give up and say, screw it. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Berhalter's going to do whatever he wants to do. He's going to call in the players he wants to call in, and none of it matters, because these are stupid games, and we're going to be terrible, and maybe we'll qualify for the next World Cup, and maybe we'll get out of the group stage. Like, I was just ready to be that apathetic fan and just kind of see what happens. But I've talked myself off the ledge over the last kind of 48 hours, and here's why. First of all, I have seen that U.S. soccer considered this game just a friendly. I disagree. They needed to take this game more seriously. They needed to impart on their players a sense of urgency and seriousness in this friendly against Mexico. If anything, give the fans something. But they took it as just a friendly. Let's play our game. Let's develop our system. If you want to do that, though, why are you scheduling games against Mexico?
Right.
If you want to become a possession team, build from the back, which clearly is what they want to do and what they tried and failed against Mexico to do, why are you scheduling friendlies against Mexico? You're going to see them in qualifying. You're going to see them in Gold Cup. You don't need more friendlies against them. Go, play more South American teams. Go play a European team. Maybe you get some of your European-based players a better opportunity to suit up because they don't have to travel across an ocean. Brings me to my next point. You did have a lot of guys traveling from all over the world to come play in this game in New York, New Jersey, East Rutherford, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
So I know travel probably had a little something to do with it. But the fact is, the U.S. treated this game as a developmental opportunity. They didn't take it as serious as the fan base wanted. So there's problems with that, and there's benefits to that. The other thing is that the fan base got so bent out of shape. The fact that Will Trapp started, Giassi Zardes started, that Zach Steffen played terribly from the back with his feet, with his field play. Gave it a little more thought. And the more I thought about it, the more I feel like my thoughts were in line with a lot of other writers and soccer talking heads, that if you're going to implement a new system, you can't put out 11 rookies to the system and expect anything. You need to have someone be able to transition them. Zardes, Stefan, and Trapp know Berhalter's system from their time at Columbus. So by keeping them in the starting lineup and by keeping them in camp all year since Berhalter's taken over as a coach, they can ease that transition. So players like Dest, like Reggie Cannon, can say, if I'm going to play it out of the back, I know where Will Trapp is supposed to be, and I can expect him to be there. They're not thinking, oh no, is that central defensive midfielder in the right spot? Is our striker in the right spot? Do I play it there? Zardes and Trapp are there. They know that. They don't have to worry about that. So it's a transition period. We saw that with Bradley and Altidore in friendlies earlier in the year. Now he's transitioned to Zardes and Trapp. So maybe when the games get competitive, when we start seeing some Nations League games, when we start seeing some qualifying games next year, year after, maybe we'll finally, much to the delight of the U.S. fan base, transition away from Will Trapp and Gyasi Zardes. And hopefully, Zach Steffen won't have to be playing little 8-yard passes, 10-yard passes from his goal mouth to his wingback defenders just to try and break some of the pressure of the opposing team. So I gave it a lot of thought, and I think that has kind of brought me off of the ledge from a USMNT standpoint. What do you think about that, Mike? Is it worth it? Are you taking the long sell here from Berhalter?
No, I'm not, and here's why. Because you don't have the opportunity to do a long sell when, and this isn't Berhalter's fault, that he wasn't hired for a year plus after they didn't qualify for the World Cup. But the problem here is you had an absolute disaster with the United States not qualifying for the World Cup. You can't take a slow build from something like that. You have got to we're trying to grow the sport in this country. Yeah. We are trying to become one of those top nations. You can't just say, oh, well, you know what, hey, by the time 4 years from now, we might have something put together to put on the field. Doesn't work that way.
And then not start for
a
year.
Get it figured out quickly and get on with it. The problem here with, this, we were talking about, okay, well, they're scheduling a team like Mexico, and something like this might be okay if you're not playing Mexico. That's fine, but you also need to schedule teams that you can show your fan base that you're getting something done. You're improving. If you're playing, these no-name teams, it's not going to help. Now, should they be playing France and, Brazil and Argentina and those types of clubs? No. But they should be playing your Swedens, your kind of your second-tier teams in Europe, your, Costa Rica, if you're going to schedule a Concacaf group. The problem here is you got a fan base that really, I think they figured out that this fan base isn't going anywhere. The base that they have now, they don't have to please because the fan base now won't go anywhere. They're the diehards. They're the ones that are sticking through it. They don't have the new fans that they're trying to grab a hold of. But they've got to get something going. I understand the team is young, but you've got to do better than what you're doing right now, especially when you're that far into your coaching tenure.
And you're right as far as the fan base, they're not worried about ticket sales because if the American fans aren't going to go buy tickets, as long as you're scheduling Central and South American teams, there's enough of a population in the United States where they're going to sell out every game. I think someone even put out there was a friendly between two Liga MX teams in Chicago, and it's sold out. How many?
61,000 people for Club America tickets. And Club America and Chivas, I believe it was.
I think so.
On a Monday night in Chicago on an international break when half their damn teams aren't even there.
Right. So
and the Chicago Fire can't draw 8,000 people to Toyota Park /Bridgeview /SeatGeek /Soldier Field.
Well, we'll get to that after the break. We'll talk a little bit more about the Fire specifically, but yeah. So the U.S. isn't worried about ticket sales. You're right. They're not worried about filling stadiums. Why they would do it, New Jersey, New York, then if they're having games there, maybe that says something different. But they're not worried about that. Maybe they're paying lip service now to those big cities. Then maybe when it actually qualifying matters and you need a home crowd, then you go to Columbus. Then you go to Kansas City. Then you go to Portland or Seattle. Maybe that's when you start to see a more, we'll say, U.S. American friendly crowd get scheduled in those kind of stadiums. But as far as scheduling opponents and what you're trying to do, I like the Uruguay schedule. I think that's a good team. A team who's competing to try and get into that upper echelon in CONMEBOL in South America. They're right behind Brazil and Argentina. They're probably on par with Chile, maybe not yet at Colombia level. But they've got solid talent. They've got an excellent youth program. I think the Uruguay U20s or U23s had made a really good run recently, I think. So, yeah, schedule teams like that. What we're seeing now in this game against Uruguay, I'm going to use that as a transition. You know, we've seen a completely different starting lineup. And I know San Jose fans are thrilled to see Jackson Ewell starting for the United States against Uruguay. To see Josh Sargent starting and hopefully getting a full 90 minutes. To have Serginho Dest, now that he's gotten his first cap for the United States out of the way, maybe he'll be a little more comfortable playing in that wingback position. And I was able to catch him. He had a real nice strike. Nice little low curling shot that the Uruguayan goalkeeper just parried away shortly before the end of the first half. So these guys are kind of getting a little more exposure, a little more in their comfort zone, continuing to try to develop. So when then, Mike, when do you start to play to win? Do we have to wait for competitive matches for qualifying for Nations League? Or should the team be trying to play to win come next year's international break with their friendlies? Like, what's your timetable? What do you want to see?
I think they should start to try and win now, and field the team that they need to. I'm all for a preseason of sorts to experiment, see who can win those last roster spots, stuff like that. But you've got to come up with a formula on a team that you want to play and keep it that way. The only consistent player in the U.S. men's national team so far this year has been one, Daniel Lovitz. The guy gets into every game. He's gotten into this one as well tonight. Why, I don't know, but that's for another conversation.
Honestly, does anyone out there know why Daniel Lovitz keeps getting national team call-ups? Anyone? Like, theories, crazy theories, legit theories? Does anyone know anything? Because we are stumped about why Montreal Impact, right? He plays for the Impact. This guy is playing on a team that's struggling to make the playoffs in the MLS, yet he's one of Berhalter's favorites.
Yeah.
Are we missing a relationship somewhere? Do we not know what's going on? I'm looking right into the camera, so people on YouTube, you jump in too. Tell me what's going on with Daniel Lovitz, and that's all I'll say about that. Because if you're going to say Will Trapp can't cut it at an international level, if Giassi Zardes can't cut it at an international level, there's even people ripping on Paul Arriola that he should be. Now, I like Arriola. I think he's great on the wing. I think he's a lot faster than people give him credit for. But people are saying Arriola can't even cut it on a USMNT level. But why is Daniel Lovitz there? Why is nobody picking on him?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't get it. Unless they're just figuring he's gone by the time real games come. I don't know.
I guess. I don't know. They've got to start fielding a consistent team. Start that competition. There's no competition inside this U.S. national team. It's, well, maybe Bradley will come play. Well, maybe it'll be Trapp. Well, let's try this new kid out.
It's tryouts right now. It's still tryouts.
Yeah, but that's what's got to stop. They've got to get where you've got a starter and somebody as a backup. They're fighting. Their club form is going to push them maybe into a lead to get a start in the next game. Start playing meaningful games and caring about it now. Because if you wait until World Cup qualifying starts, which we've got to talk completely the rehaul of World Cup qualifying for Concacaf, which is just completely idiotic from my point of view. But there's games that matter, and you've got to start playing to win those now, because if you don't, you're going to get caught up on those games right when they happen. You say, oh yeah, now we're going to start, and it's going to be too late.
The U.S. they are not good enough to flip a switch, so to speak, and just turn it on all of a sudden when the games count. And here's the thing, though. Let's talk about, like you said, club play versus is that going to propel you into the national team conversation. I want to talk about a guy like Sebastian Legit, who's playing for the Galaxy. He's in MLS, so I don't know if that works for or against him. Legit's a guy who seems to play better at the international level and to play better with the U.S. roster than he does for the Galaxy. Now, maybe injuries have hampered him over the last couple of years. I'll give him that. And right now, the Galaxy's only offensive shape is once the ball gets out of the back line, get it to Zlatan. And even then, if you can play it over the top to Zlatan, get it to Zlatan. So that's kind of the Galaxy's game plan. So maybe Legit is being underutilized at his club. So how does he compete then for a national team spot? Because he had some good balls in against Mexico. He played some good service into attacking areas for our strikers. Unfortunately, they couldn't do anything with it. But I think he is a better international player than the club. How would a guy like that prove to Berhalter, prove to U.S. Soccer that he needs to be on the USMNT roster?
On the training field, when he gets called in the games, when he's playing and he's called into these games and he's starting or he's coming off the bench, do it in your play there. And two, I mean, it's not necessarily the stats in soccer, and especially someone like that, you know, in a midfield type role, not a, you know, striker is probably the only position that you're like, oh yeah, by the goals, this is exactly what we're looking for. Look, these guys watch the games. You can watch his club games and say, okay, this is what he's supposed to be doing. This is what he's doing. I like his movement off the ball. I like this. I don't like that. You know, he missed a few tackles. That kind of stuff. You don't necessarily have to, you know, watch it and say, oh, well, his team's not doing well, or they're not getting, he's not, you know, getting the ball to Zlatan enough. You know, there's different ways about it, but they've got to start getting a competition in place and a roster in place to say, this is the team we've got going forward. Let's start working with that team and go. We've got the coach now. We had Dave Sarachan at the helm for a year or so to kind of do some of that for us. Let's start playing now.
Yeah, and we can go back and criticize U.S. Soccer for not doing anything sooner, especially if they want to play this kind of build from the back. And extra time, the MLS podcast put it, I think, pretty well, where, look, if you want to have a higher ceiling, if you want to have a higher potential, then you need to be this possession-oriented, build from the back, control the game, control the tempo, pace kind of team. So they should have been doing that from a year ago with Sarachan, right, trying to instill that and like work those kind of players in, and you know, pull the Berhalter system or hire him earlier. Right. You know, then what was the debate is who you're going to hire. My counterpoint to that is France just won a World Cup bunkering and countering and playing long balls over the top because they had the players to do that. Yep. And honestly, I think the U.S. might be a little better suited to do that given all the variables about U.S. soccer. Guys playing in the United States, guys playing in Mexico, guys playing leagues throughout Europe. You want to bring all of them together for like a 2-week camp to prep for some international tournament. Maybe you'd be better suited just doing that and saying, hey, look, as long as we're win games, qualifying, coming in no worse than second in Gold Cups, and then, hey, maybe every couple of World Cup cycles we really make a run for the semifinals and finals, maybe you're better off doing that. But that's not the way the U.S. Soccer wanted to go, so we can't go back in time. This is what we're stuck with for the time being.
Yeah.
Now speaking of U.S. Soccer, Jordan Morris, man, comes up and equalizes in the 79th minute against Uruguay. 1-1. Now we're into the 81st minute. How do you feel about Jordan Morris? What do you think about him competing with Josie and Zardes, and what other strikers do we have in our pool? How do you feel about Jordan Morris, Sargent, there it is,
yeah,
being our number one kind of striker? Do you think he can do it?
I don't know if he's a number one. I think he's good. I think he's better than Zardes. I think he's probably, if he was healthy, it's kind of that Josie Altidore question, right? If you put Jordan Morris and Josie Altidore on the field and both are healthy, I still go with Josie. Jordan Morris has some injury issues that he's had all of his career.
Right.
So I think they're kind of on that even playing field. Josie's probably got him a little bit more. But he's good. He's decent. I don't have any problems with him being on the squad. I think that's why everybody's so hyped up about Josh Sargent, because people don't really know him yet. They don't know his game yet. Yeah, you see some highlights over in the Bundesliga. but they don't know his game. They know Josie's game. They know Jordan Morris's game. They know Jossie Zardes' game. They know how these guys do. They've seen them play in the national team level as well as the club level a lot. Haven't seen a lot out of Josh Sargent. So it's a hope, the potential.
If all players are healthy, if everyone in the pool is healthy, who are your strikers 1, 2, 3? Who are your top 3, starting with your number 1?
Number 1, I would go with Josie. Number 2, I would probably go with Sargent, just from what I've seen little bits and pieces of. Third, Morris.
Sure. I think that's a fair assessment. You think Morris has surpassed Jossie Zardes in that aspect. And yeah, probably. The way they've played as of late, hard to disagree with you. Mike, final thoughts on the U.S. We had a good lineup. Let's talk a little bit about the defenders here for this game against Uruguay. We saw what kind of lineup they went with against Mexico. The only consistent starter was Serginho Dest. I'm glad he's getting another opportunity with the U.S. team. He gets to show off a little of his attacking talent. But how quickly did the universe turn on him? Like, from the 20th minute against Mexico to the 21st minute against Mexico, where he was on fire. He's making runs. He's feeding the ball forward, and then he gets nutmegged, embarrassed, and then the player who takes him just chips it over for the Chicharito goal, and all of a sudden now he went from the almost being the GOAT to an actual GOAT. How do you feel about Dest playing the wingback for the next 4 years for the United States?
It's better than Daniel Lovitz.
Are you really making that the bar? Is that the standard right now?
That's pretty much it. He's probably the best we've got on the wing, other than, maybe Yedlin.
Okay. I'd like to see Yedlin. I think that's your competition point, right? Yeah. Like, if you make Yedlin the starter and then have Dest competing with him and pushing him in every camp, you put Cannon in that mix as well. And you get those 3 guys fighting for a spot, assuming, like, you've got the current lineup with Long or Zimmerman or Ream, 3 guys playing central defenders there. Those 3 guys fighting for 2 spots. And then who knows where Tyler Adams comes back and fit into the mix. If he's going to be a kind of a, I think they're calling it like an inverted 6 or something like that, where he might be starting at a defensive role but has the ability to push up and play more as a midfielder, depending on what the situation allows. Because again, part of the Berhalter's type system, and I'm calling it the Berhalter system because I don't know what else to call it. Yeah. Part of it is overloading, getting mismatches, overloading a certain area of the field so you can create an open man, control the space, control the passing, and then exploit that. So if Adams is kind of your free rover, is he going to be playing mid? Is he going to be playing D? But again, competition. Right. Competition makes people better. So any other comments, Mike, on the defense, the midfield? Jackson Ewell, Christian Roldan, Sebastian Legit starting in that 3 central midfield or 3 midfielder role. How do you feel about this lineup? Like, if we were going to go into a competitive game with this lineup against Uruguay, how would you feel?
I'd be scared. Honestly, I'd be scared. Depending on what type of competition you're talking about. If you're talking about their matchup against Cuba coming up in the Nations League, I'm not worried about it. I think it's fine. If you're talking about a Gold Cup final against Mexico, or a World Cup qualifying game against Costa Rica, or a World Cup game against Ghana, I'm concerned. Brad Guzan, not a chance. But then again, we all know that Guzan wouldn't be starting. It would be Steffen, because he's the clear number 1. The defense is okay. The midfield with Roldan, Ewell, Leggett, we have much better options than that. I don't really know much about this Jackson Ewell kid from San Jose. There's a lot of hype around him. I've never really watched him play. I've only watched a few San Jose games here and there late on Saturday nights, but I've never really focused in on his play, so I can't really judge on it other than I don't know him that well.
Sure.
But Sargent, Morris, okay, but the midfield, I think, would really have a hard time controlling a midfield against some superior competition.
I think that's a fair assessment, Mike. And as far as Jackson Ewell goes, he's been part of kind of the turnaround for San Jose Quakes. He's, to use a cliche, he's kind of that midfield motor that makes everything run. He can do everything from assists to goals to defensive shape to coordinate, all that sort of thing. Almeida, I think he kind of plays like a man marking system. So Ewell's running all over the field. The guy's got to be fit and, ready for the international level from a fitness standpoint. And I know one of our avid listeners, Mike Kleeman, is really big on Jackson Ewell. He was furious that Ewell wasn't starting in the Mexico game, or at least getting more time in the Mexico game. And to see Ewell starting as your central midfielder, pulling the strings for the U.S. In the midfield, so to speak, I think says a lot about his potential, and hopefully he can stay in camp in the future with Berhalter. One last thought, Mike. Tim Ream is the captain for tonight. How do you feel about that?
Okay.
And why not
Who's
just
the captain? I mean, you got an experimental squad. He's the only guy that has any experience outside of Guzan. Real experience, with lots of caps. So, sure. Give him the armband. Great.
Well, with that, we're going to wrap up our USMNT talk. We're about halfway through. We're going to take a quick break, hear a word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back with you shortly.
Buckets on here.
Oh, my God.
All right, so back from break, let's touch a little bit more on the international side of things. The Concacaf Nations League is underway. We've got the first round of games in the group. The only ones that we're going to talk about here really quick are the Group A matchups. You've got Canada playing Cuba. Canada playing at BMO Field the other night, wins 6-0 over Cuba, did what they were supposed to do, easily won that game. And now it sets up a matchup with Cuba tonight in Cuba. Actually, it's not in Cuba because their stadium wasn't realized by FIFA or something. So they're at some other place in the Caribbean playing a game. And this one ended up finishing 1-0 for Canada. Canada gets the 6 points, kind of secures not getting relegated into the B League for the next term. But it'll set up some interesting matchups between Canada and the U.S. to see who will move on from that. So Concacaf Nations League, I think it's in its beginning stages. It's the first time it's ever happened.
Absolutely, and the way they've set it up has just kind of been based on last year's Hex and some FIFA rankings.
And exactly, and then they had kind of a qualifying round, and it was you had to win every game by 8 goals in order to get into the top league, which those certain teams did. So it's kind of a work in progress. I don't think that CONCACAF has the talent to really make this a big deal yet. I think they've got a ways to go. I mean, you look at, they kind of was spearheaded by the UEFA Nations League, and there you've got the talent, right? You've got like 3 tiers at the top, and then you've got some middle tiers, and obviously your small little countries. In CONCACAF, you have like a small tier of United States, Mexico, Costa Rica, and then there's like a second tier, your Canadas, Jamaicas, and then after that, it's just a bunch of minnows. So it's going to take some time to get used to in CONCACAF, but I'm a fan of it. More competitive games, the better. I think it's good rather than the friendlies. You're playing competitive matches that actually count towards something, so I'm all for that. But that's kind of the CONCACAF Nations League in a nutshell.
Yeah, you've got League A, League B, and League C, and you've got League A, like you said, your heavy hitters, Mexico, U.S., Costa Rica, Honduras, Panama, and then kind of that second tier, Canada, Haiti, TNT, Martinique, Cuba, Curacao, Bermuda. Unfortunately, because it was based on the Hex and some rankings, you've got Jamaica and El Salvador, who are actually in League B. What's cool about this is it's got a promotion relegation system. Not that I'm advocating that for MLS. I'm not going to open that can of worms. But you've got League A with your top 12 teams in CONCACAF, broken down into 3 groups, 4 groups. And then you've got your top, whoever wins your groups, beautiful, perfect. Eventually that'll be your Gold Cup qualifiers. And then if you win your group in League B, boom, you're moving up to League A. So you're advancing to be able to play for Gold Cup. And ultimately, what this all comes down to is qualifying for the World Cup. Because, Mike, we were talking about this a little before. If you are in CONCACAF, your World Cup qualifying, is this going to start for 2022 or 2020?
Yes, 2022.
2022 is going to be based on your FIFA rank. It's not going to be based on the hex or whatever qualifying or some sort of qualifying tournament. The Nations League has kind of taken that role over, and obviously if you're dominating the Nations League, then you're going to have the highest FIFA ranking within CONCACAF and then qualify for the World Cup. So I agree with you. This is great for countries like Curacao and Guyana and for Nicaragua who really want to play meaningful games and who aren't going to go be able to schedule, I don't know, say like Andorra or Moldova or some of the other maybe smaller South American teams, if there is such a thing as a small
Right.
South American team, and have all that international travel when these guys are probably part-time professionals.
These federations don't have the money for that kind of stuff either.
Yeah,
right?
so now you've got organized, competitive, meaningful matches, and you're only going to see it get better. And it's going to push teams like the United States to continue to improve. You can't just sit back and say, well, as long as we make the hex, then we just got to beat Honduras and Panama and we're good. No, you're going to have to continue to improve, because if you lose a game to, say, a Curacao or a Martinique, who maybe has a good game and wins 2-1 on some freak handball call, one that didn't get called in the Uruguay-US game right before the first half, we'll put that out there, referees, then that's going to drop the U.S. in the rankings. A lot of people are making the comparison to American college football, and when it was under the old system where it was just, the algorithm that ranks you. So FIFA's going to kind of have a little bit of that going for them. But yes, meaningful games, more pointed qualifying, the rankings mean more. The U.S. can't, as you say, Mike, maybe this ties into our earlier discussion, the U.S. can't take time to develop a system anymore. You got to win games, you got to move up the ranks.
Yeah, I'm for the competitive side of it, but what scares me though is these FIFA basing things off of these rankings is trouble, because it doesn't come down to a game against a team, and that's where it's not. To me, it's not quite up to par with what it should be, in my opinion. I think you should have a hex. I think you should have qualifying to get into the hex, as CONCACAF does, or like UEFA does, which I'm sure they're changing their system up now too. But you've got groups. You're playing in matches. If you lose that match, you don't go. If you win that match, you may go. It's not going to be that simple with these new rankings and algorithms and all that kind of stuff. So you might have a team that goes through and wins 5 out of 6 games, and they don't get in. And that's where it's not that. I don't like that side of it. I want to see like a straight up bracket. Give me 16 teams. Let's fight to the death, and the teams that make the quarterfinals are in, or semifinals, or something like that. Rather than, hey, we're going to base this off of formula and some point system and this and that. It has nothing to do with the games.
Spoken like a true Canadian fan, because the Canadian men's national team pretty much has to be perfect throughout the Nations League in order to rank high enough and to advance far enough to qualify for the World Cup. So all eyes are on Canada. However, big hit. One of their players got a red card. One of their starting midfielders picked up a red. So he's going to be out against their game against the United States coming up. We'll see how much that affects them. So with that, we're going to wrap up our international talk. We're going to get into an MLS headline. The biggest headline, especially for us local guys around the Chicago area, is that the Chicago Fire have closed in on a Soldier Field deal. I'm sorry, I butchered that. Maybe it's because I've had 3 drinks of Jack so far, if you haven't noticed me sipping on that in the YouTube video. Let me try that again. The Chicago Fire closed in on Soldier Field deal. There. That was much better. Enunciate. Red leather, yellow leather, red leather. Anyway, so we all know how the Chicago got out of their deal with Bridgeview, and they're going to be paying the city of Bridgeview $60 million over the next 10 years or something like that, 15 years, whatever it is. Which, sidebar, apparently the city of Bridgeview is now raising taxes in order to offset their losses from the Chicago Fire using their facilities in Bridgeview. whatever your political leanings are, sucks to live in Bridgeview right now.
Yeah.
So the Chicago Fire, screwing over fans, screwing over residents. To put it bluntly there. And we got an email in from one of our ardent supporters here of the show, John, who says, hope you read the articles about the Fire and the Athletic. How on earth are they going to continue with a coach and a president that have the lowest goal average in the league? The move, the name change, all the money that they flush down the toilet is ridiculous. I have a 4-year-old I take to DePaul games, and I'm embarrassed to say anything about the Fire to him. So, the next generation of fans in John's family is definitely not going to be raised as a Chicago Fire supporter. But they're closing in on a Soldier Field deal. What kills me is that it's reportedly about a 10-year deal.
Wow.
And you can find an article in Crane's Chicago Business. They've got some good info on it. The Chicago Park District is going to vote on it sometime Wednesday, tomorrow, from time of recording. So we'll see what happens there. But it's a 10-year deal, Mike. Like, this is a team who came in. It was the first expansion team, pretty much, in MLS back in '98.
Right.
When the movement was for soccer-specific stadiums, when we were trying to build that foundation, now you've got them leaving their dedicated facility in Bridgeview, going to a park district where they got to pay rent, even though it is Soldier Field. Good luck filling that, by the way.
Yeah.
No, your fan base, who's all in the suburbs, isn't going to be paying an extra $40 just to park at Soldier Field, on top of whatever ticket price and concessions you want to charge them. Not to mention all the other things that the MLS is doing with what fans can do and cannot do in their stadiums. But we'll leave that for other people to discuss.
Yeah.
So good luck filling the stadium, and now you're committing to a 10-year deal? What do you figure? In 5 years you can just back out of this too and pay the city if you want?
I guess.
Like,
I mean,
you're going to get that expansion money and just throw it away? I don't understand this at all, Mike. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, that shows to me that they have no immediate plans to build a stadium in the city. They're not going to sign a 10-year deal and, thinking about a 5-year plan on building a soccer-specific stadium somewhere in, downtown area. This is saying, hey, they're going to Soldier Field, they're playing their games in Soldier Field, and they're staying there for a damn long time. I think it's ridiculous. They've got to. Let me stop myself. This has nothing to do. This doesn't matter. None of this matters unless this management group gets out of Dodge, because they have just completely screwed the pooch with every decision they've made. They have got to turn it around. They've got to start making different decisions with their player personnel, their coaching personnel, how they operate their business. It has to be completely different. And until they change those things, and moving a stadium or going to a bigger stadium in a different location is not going to make a difference. That's not what needs to be done. What needs to be done is signing some players that people know about outside of a Bastian Schweinsteiger, who people in Chicago don't really know about. Right. People in Chicago, I mean, remember this guy in his intro press conference, somebody asked him, are you going to help the Chicago Fire win the World Cup? Chicago don't know Bastian Schweinsteiger. Chicago don't know, hell, half of them probably don't even know Messi, for Christ's sake. They need some good players, South American players, Mexican players. Look at that. I think is what is the most telling factor in all of this is when you had Cuauhtemoc Blanco playing for that team, Toyota Park was sold out every single week. The team was competitive. They had a star player, Mexican player, who people knew, especially in the areas of Chicago, and the soccer fans in Chicago. Not saying that only Mexicans like soccer in Chicago. There's every single diverse group out there.
Well, that's why they signed Przemysław Frankowski, the Polish player. Because,
there's
Chicago's as Polish as it is Mexican, right?
Yeah, but come on. Look at the national teams and how they work. I mean, you said it best, the 61,000 that went to a midweek friendly between two teams in the middle of their season that sells out Soldier Field. Obviously, there's the calling. Hello. Anybody, please.
There you go.
Whoever's got the management of this team, knock, knock, wake up.
And honestly, Mike, you want to talk about you need new management and ownership in Chicago before any real change happens on the field? I think you're going to get that in a few years. I really think the current ownership group, it's totally just a money grab. That they are minimizing as much cost as they can. They've committed themselves to this terrible buyout deal in the Bridgeview deal. They've committed themselves to this terrible 10-year deal at Soldier Field. But you know what? Once all these expansion teams, St. Louis, Nashville, Miami, Sacramento, once all these expansion teams come in the next 4 or 5 years and they get all their sweet franchise deals, this management group this ownership group is gonna take their money, pocket it, sell it, and then let the next ownership group deal with all the terrible moves, both financially and on the field, that they've made.
Yeah, you got a point. Maybe that's it.
So with that being said, let's dive in now to our regular league roundup. By the way, fans, just went final. USMNT Uruguay 1-1. Probably
Not
a fair
bad.
result. Fair result, considering the lineup, considering the opponent, considering everything that's happened over the last 2 weeks with USMNT. 1-1 draw. Not terrible. Not terrible.
Not bad.
So let's dive into our MLS League roundup here.
Not a ton since it was the international break.
Quote unquote break.
Yeah, break.
Break
For the camera.
I'm doing takes to the camera, so go on YouTube to figure out why that was ridiculous.
Yeah, so anyways, New York City FC hosting New England Revolution in the first game on Saturday afternoon. New York City FC just keeps rolling. Another victory for New York City, 2-1 over the Revs. A late penalty kick in this one. A little bit of help from the soccer gods, so to say, for New York City.
It's their season of destiny, Mike. New York's gonna come over that hump of one and done playoff type of performances, right?
Talk to me in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Talk to me in the playoffs.
Okay.
This team has to prove in the playoffs, but they're quietly putting together a beautiful season in MLS, and at the top of the East right now. They've overtaken Philadelphia. They've overtaken Atlanta United. They are sitting number 1, games in hand even. So, really good game from New York City to take the unmitigated lead in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, they're definitely a more complete team, I think, this year than what we've seen in the last couple of years when they were so heavily...
They're not just David Villa.
They were never just David Villa,
Yes, they were.
But he was everything to them. He was their...
Wait. They were not just
hang on.
David Villa, but he was everything to them.
Yeah,
What?
right? Like, when I was dating a girl, like, I was more than just, what the girlfriend was, but yeah, she was everything to me. Anyway, whatever.
Okay.
So yes, NYCFC was dating David Villa for a long time, I guess. No, he was the start of their offense. He was the end of their offense. He was kind of the start of their transition. Like, he did everything but play goalie for them. But now they're a more complete team. They've got Eber, as I've mispronounced him, Eber previously. They've got Eber. They've got Morales, who's just playing out of his mind. They've got options. They've got weapons. They've got everything going for them. Their defense has pretty much been the same. And you're right. They're not allowing a lot of goals, and they're not losing games.
Right.
Now,
Wins
maybe
and draws.
maybe that's different come playoff time when you need to win to advance,
Right.
especially in a one game scenario here.
But if they're sitting at the top of the Eastern Conference and every game is at home, that home field advantage on that tiny little baseball field is definitely helpful.
Absolutely. So is this the year that NYCFC is the Eastern Conference rep in the MLS Cup? Is this their year?
Maybe. I don't think so. Just because they haven't proven themselves in the past.
All right, tell me
in the
right now.
playoffs.
Atlanta, NYCFC. If they played today, who are you taking?
Atlanta.
If it's in New York.
Atlanta.
All right, I think that's fair enough, Mike. We know where we stand on that. Let's move on to the next game. I know one you were excited about.
Yes, I was. I was very excited about it, but again, I kind of had to take it with a grain of salt because this is a team who is playing an expansion team. Yes, it was in Cincinnati. Toronto FC went to Cincinnati and laid the smackdown 5-1. A big win for TFC, especially in the playoff push, but I kind of had to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt because you had a lot of guys missing from Cincinnati. So you've got an expansion team. It's one of the worst teams in history of the league.
Right.
With their full squad. Then you take out some of the guys for the international break, all of the injuries that they have. They were playing a USL team, and they did what they were supposed to do. When I first started the game and I looked at the lineups, I said to myself, this has to be 3-0 or better. If it's not, it's bad. It's gonna hurt the team. Even if they win 1-0, it's gonna hurt this team as far as the end of the push. But they got it done. They scored 5 goals. Pazuello with a few assists. Patrick Mullins gets on the board again. Josie Altidore didn't even have to come off the bench. She's injured again. Shocker. Imagine that one.
Yeah. Save him for the playoffs.
Yeah, sure. He's hurt again, but look, they played well. They did what they had to do. They got the victory. Moves them up into the 6th spot in the Eastern Conference, tied with the Red Bulls on 41 points. So they're kind of, with the few games they've got left, they're kind of sitting in a good spot, but that can change very quickly.
Absolutely. Now, personally, I want more Ledesma from Cincinnati. I
Yeah.
like the guy.
Yeah.
Personally, I like the guy. Professionally, I don't know him personally, but I think he's just a good guy. Dedicated the game to his late father, who just passed away this week. Took the penalty, got the goal for his dad. So credit to Ledesma to play through that. His dad is over in Argentina, I believe. So wasn't able to get, to really mourn him before the game started. So a lot of credit to Ledesma. I just think he's a great player on top of it. I love to see more of him, and I hope he gets more minutes in the blue and orange for Cincinnati in the years to come.
One little side note, I was happy for Nick Haglund to wear the captain's armband against his former team of TFC, his hometown team of Cincinnati. He had the armband in that one, so it was good to see.
All right, well, we're winding down here for the show. We're going to knock out these last few games. Orlando City hosted LAFC. Big playoff game for Orlando City. Maybe not so much for LAFC. They've already locked up the #1 spot in the West. They've already locked up probably the Supporters Shield and all sorts of MLS records. They weren't playing with their typical starting 11. Vela was out. And even then, they get a 2-2 draw against Orlando City. So, good point for Orlando City, but they got a lot left to do to make sure that they're in the top 7. Currently, I think on the outside looking in. So,
yeah, they are. They had to get a result in this game, and they did. I mean, technically, they did get a point, so they did get a result. I think when you go into the game thinking we're playing the best team in the league, getting a point, even at home, is a good run for an Orlando City side. But LAFC now has not won in, I think, 3 or 4 games. So ever since they wrapped up I think they even wrapped up the top seed in the West on a loss. But they just are not playing great football right now, great soccer, so we'll see. I mean, you kind of go into that lull. It happened to TFC back in 2017. They were way ahead of the pack. They kind of fell off a little bit towards the end of the season, had a few draws, couple losses. Then they picked it back up right at the end of the season going into the playoffs.
Yeah.
So,
well, that TFC team could throw a switch into full, on beast mode, whatever you want to call it. I'm pretty sure LAFC can do that.
I'm thinking they probably
year.
can too.
Yeah, Vela was out, so we'll be all right. I think LAFC's all right. Staying out west, a surprising result, maybe. Colorado Rapids at home against Seattle Sounders. 2-0 victor are the Rapids.
Yeah, new coach bounce continues.
They have been playing extremely well ever since Anthony Hudson got fired.
Yeah.
I think they've been averaging somewhere around 1.6, 1.7 points a game, something like that.
Yeah.
Also taking advantage of Roldan being out and Jordan Morris being on international duty for the U.S. So the Sounders missing 2 key starters, especially Morris's offensive punch. But Colorado gets it done, and man, Shinesiki, despite his terrible fashion sense and the way he's wearing his hair, mustache, and I guess you could call it a beard. I don't know what that little blonde thing is on his chin. He's playing well, man. He's making a case for himself to be one of Colorado's top players in the years to come. Excellent result for Colorado. I don't think they can make the playoffs. Technically not eliminated.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but these are good things to build on as they look towards an off season. Mike, Colorado, do you go out and buy that big DP, huge signing, and kind of push them into that playoff race? Or do you kind of work with you got for another year or so and then go after some big signings? What do you think?
I don't know if you go after the big DP signing, but you're going to have Tim Howard coming off the books. So you're probably going to replace him with a pretty decent DP signing. I think you got to you got to start pushing. It's not a league where you can kind of play with what you've got for another year and just kind of hang on and see if we can build. It's time to start pushing and get up there because this league's not waiting for anybody.
Right. Worst case scenario is when you got expansion teams coming in, such as like a St. Louis or Sacramento, maybe, or Nashville, Miami, surpassing one of the founding teams like Colorado. That's
Right.
keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
I think it's the last game.
Yep. Portland Timbers
hosting SKC.
Yeah.
What a game, Mike.
It was. Portland Timbers get the full 3 points at home like they needed to do. They've got to start turning these last few home games they have into the full 3 points, and they did that against Sporting Kansas City. I unfortunately did not get a chance to watch this one, but I did pick Portland to win, so I am happy about that they got it done.
Well, it was a little testy there, Mike. I think Kansas City had the early lead there, and so not early lead, but they get the go-ahead goal in the 65th off Fellhaber. Good to see him in good form. You know, a former USMNT player, a guy who's been around the American soccer landscape for a number of years. Good to see him bag the goal. But you know what really stood out in this game was Giovanni Savarese, Portland head coach's halftime interview. He blasted the officiating. From their just calls in the run of play to potential penalties. He blasted them. I think if Savarese would have had his way, Portland would have had 2 PKs in the first half. And then you add that on top of, oh goodness, I'm trying to remember what game it was. There was another, it was James O'Connor of Orlando, who on his post-game comments said, you know, we're going to look back and we're going to evaluate our team, and I think we had a good performance. I think the officials are going to look back and say that they had a pretty poor performance. So you got 2 head coaches, one mid-game, one post-game, blasting the officials in MLS here, blasting pro referees. You know what? I get it. Coaches are going to say whatever they need to. They're in the moment. They're as passionate and heated as these players are in the game sometimes. But if this is a trend, like, pro refereeing has really got to look at itself and maybe do something this offseason to improve their officials, their officiating. Maybe take a page out of the NFL's playbook and continue education. That's the lawyer in me. I got to do the CLE hours.
I've been saying that about pro referees, MLS referees, for the last 11 years since I started following this league when TFC came into it. It's just another day at the office, man. Getting ripped up by coaches, players. Pro referees suck. They're horrible. When you're talking about like league wide for the bigger leagues in the world, they're garbage. They're crap. It's going to continue that way. They're not going to get any better. When you've got guys like Baldomero Toledo, who he's actually gotten better with age, I'll give him that. He's not as bad as he was in the beginning. But you have like maybe 3 refs in MLS that I would consider are good referees. Everybody else is horrible. And they get ripped on all the time. They don't change anything. I don't expect it to change anytime soon. I just hope it does for the state of the league. If this league wants to continue to grow and be up at the top with some of these top leagues, they've got to do something about the referee.
No question there, Mike. And I've always kind of been on the fence about ripping on refs, but when you've got this many bad calls in a single weekend, there's only like 5 games.
Yeah.
Only 4 or 5 games or something like that.
5 games?
Definitely it needs to be looked at and addressed, and you're right. Hopefully the league can figure this out because, in my opinion, referees, when you don't talk about them, they've done their job.
Exactly.
So with that, Mike, I don't know, do you got any other final thoughts as we go into our kind of international break, as we're going to take a week off before our next episode?
No, I got nothing. It was a good international break, so to say. U.S. kind of redeemed themselves tonight with the 1-1 draw against Uruguay. Not quite a full redemption because they didn't put up a good showing against Mexico. Lots of games. So we're kind of into the thick of the playoff race coming forward here. So I'm excited to watch some of these games this midweek and this weekend. Look out for my YouTube picks and predictions probably on Thursday night. I'm going to miss the midweek games this week because, it's just too busy around here to do something tomorrow night when I have to watch TFC play at New York City, which should be a hell of a matchup.
Big playoff implications.
Big playoff implications for TFC. Not so much for New York City, but still with them trying to hold down the top of the East. So with that, thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate your ears. Check us out at SOP Soccer on Twitter. Get into the conversation with us. Shoot us an email, podcast@sonsofapitchsoccer.com. We will talk to you guys next week.
Oh, sweet. Dude, that's fucking awesome. It's only 9:30. Nice. Oh, man. Breaking news.